Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My name's Abby.
My name is Tori.
And this podcast is for God, from us, and to you.
So you are listening to XOXO Godly Girls. This is a Christian podcast where we talk about a little bit of everything and how God is found in everything, and everything that we do is for Him. Basically, everything, God, Jesus, everything to do with everything.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. I feel like isn't that a movie? Everything, or a song?
Everything. I don't know.
You're going to lead us into it. Yeah. That's funny. If you have been listening in for a little while and following along with us, we just want to say thank you, because this has really been a fun and growing journey. Not all things fun. A lot of stuff that we've overcome through this. But we appreciate you guys who are following along with us, commenting, sharing things with your friends. And so that helps us too, like in the whatever and getting things out. When you like things and you comment it, if it actually is helping you, it's going to get to other people the more interactive you are with us. And so if you like things you're listening to, share it with a friend if you think it's going to help them. If you don't think it's going to help them, don't send it to them. Simple, done, easy as that. But yeah, if you listen along and you like it, we're not going to come on here every week and say, like and subscribe. That's up to you if you actually like it or not. But if you do, do that.
If you like it, put
like
a ring
that
on
little
it.
like. Yeah, if you like it, put a ring on it. Like Colton did to Abby. If you like us and you like this podcast about Jesus, hit a little subscribe. But yeah, totally on you. Your call.
All right. So when this podcast is coming out is after the new year, which is crazy. So
That is crazy.
What's been the best part of this year for you?
Best part of this year for me.
Mm-hmm.
This year has been a lot about doing things that make me uncomfortable. And so I'd say two things. One was stepping into student director at the church, because I didn't know if I could do it, and God has grown me a lot through that. And same with this podcast. We have talked about it for a really long time, but then it was putting in the effort and then actually doing it. So I think the best part of my year was doing things that felt uncomfortable and seeing God grow me through those and help other people. Yeah.
That's good. Mine kind of, I get that.
Yeah.
Been there with you. But best part of my year has probably been getting engaged and then starting this podcast with you, because it has been uncomfortable. A lot of change for both of us this year. We both have started new jobs and this podcast, so it's not been easy, but it's been really good to see the growth that we've both been through.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And we operate, for those listening, there's a lot of things that we say that might be confusing. We'll reference last week's episode, and it's like 5 weeks ago for you. Okay, not 5, but 2 weeks ago, because we operate 2 weeks in advance with everything, just in case of mess-ups or little things like that. Holidays in preparation, and through editing and stuff. Obviously, we have both full-time jobs and lives. Like, I don't want to have to rush to do this. So it's been nice. And operating 2 weeks in advance, that's actually insane, because we haven't even had Christmas yet, and this is coming out in around New Year's. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so we also want your input as well as we're going into next year and we're starting a new year, because I have a list of 70 ideas of podcast topics, but I want to know what you guys are going through and what they want to hear, we want to help them. And
not you just... have that many. That's amazing.
It was one of those things where it's 2 a.m. and I'm laying in bed, like last night when I texted you at 2 a.m. It's one of those things I wake up and I'm like, well, I'm not going back to sleep. Let me write 70 podcast ideas for the upcoming. So, yeah. Before we even began, I was like, man, I really hope that God wants us to do this, because
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
But, okay, that actually kind of brings us into what we're talking about today, because in our first episode, we talked about how do we know if God wanted us to do this, and the big thing. Okay, actually, both of the things I said were my high of this year happened through fasting. The first fast that I ever did and took seriously, both with my job and with the podcast, which is crazy. But we talked about fasting in our first episode and how much it impacted us, but we didn't even talk about what fasting was or the importance of it or how to do it, where does that even come from? And so stepping into the new year, a lot of churches go through church-wide fast or prayer, starting off the year like that. But I don't know. We want to start off our year like that with you guys too, and helping you understand why we do it. So
Okay, so I did a little research. Okay, so through this podcast, I think my goal is to kind of challenge everybody listening to grow in their relationship with Christ by doing a fast or praying more. So I did a little research on what fasting is, what prayer is, what it means. And so I started with how many times it's mentioned in the Bible. So prayer is mentioned over 600 times in the Bible, not just the word, but like speaking to God, like in that sense. So that's a lot of times. And then fasting is mentioned over 70 times in the Bible. So that's quite a bit, because like as growing up, I honestly didn't hear about fasting until here at our church when we, as a church, they started doing it, and haven't really taken it seriously until this year, which is crazy to me because we've been a Christian for so long. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you feel like shifted from taking it seriously to before that, whenever, because have you fasted before?
Before, I mean, fasting, like we did one as like a church-wide at the beginning of the year, but I didn't really take it seriously in a way. And so it didn't really have any effect on me because I didn't take it seriously. And then me and you did a fast right before we started the podcast to know if that's what God wanted us to do. And so that's when I took it seriously, because I actually was scared to start the podcast. And so I wanted God's to have our full attention and actually listen to what he had to say and not just think, oh, it's what I want to do. And so I think that's whenever I started taking it seriously. And then we just did a fast yesterday, which was a full day fast of no eating. And I told Tori,
this was like the end of the night.
I told Tori, let's do a fast with no eating. And at the end of the night, I was like, Tori, I haven't drank either. And she was like, why didn't you tell me? And I was like,
girl, I've been drinking water all day.
I was like, I didn't intentionally not drink water. Yeah. I just didn't carry my water anywhere, so I didn't eat or drink at all yesterday. So.
Which was a different kind of reliance, yeah. And so I think where fasting in my mind kind of shifted, because I had fasted before, because church I went to before this, and even here in our youth group, we've done like church-wide fast. Or they'd say like, hey, we're starting off the year, I'm going to fast personally. This would be a good time for you. So fasting isn't like some huge public thing that everybody should know what you're fasting from or for or whatever. But I had given things up, but that was just a practice of self-control. Like I never fasted, because fasting is for God and like for something that you're needing or you're lacking, which is why those fasts we took so seriously, because we needed reliance. Like we had to depend on God for the podcast and me stepping into this job. And before that, it was like I would fast, and Luke would always say, what are you fasting for? What are you fasting from? So like, what is the thing that you are giving up for the Lord, and what is the thing that you are hoping to get from the Lord? And I didn't like that personally, because I don't even like asking God for things, because I feel like I'm pretty blessed. And so I don't ever want to feel like I'm giving him an ultimatum, like, hey, I'm going to withhold this so that you give me something. Like that felt gross to me personally. But he talks about fasting, and he wants us to, because it actually helps us to depend on him. But for me, it was like, I would say I'm fasting for, what would I even say I was fasting for before? I don't know. I don't know that I ever really, really knew. Like I would pray for God to reveal to me what I needed to fast for, but then I would be like, I'm not going to do this, and I would give it up, which is great. Like now I'm a more disciplined person. I practice self-control, but I wouldn't feel that time with spending time with God. Like I'd fast from my phone, and that's great, but then I'd just go hang out with my friends more, or I'd read, or do different things, but wouldn't spend time with him.
Yeah, I read this thing, I think whenever I was researching fasting, and it was like, if you are fasting, quote, from a sin, then that's not really fasting. That's, I don't remember the word they used, but it was like you shouldn't be doing that sin anyways. Like that's giving up what you shouldn't be doing. And so I was just like, that's crazy, because a lot of times like we do fast from our phones or something, and that's whenever you have to, it depends on how you look at it, I guess. But if you're on your phone so much, it becomes an idol. And so like having an idol is a sin. And so that like blew my mind when I was like, Whoa,
I'd
that's
say
crazy.
that's an all thing, because a lot of people, and a lot of people, we also fasted from sweets, but it's like your body also wasn't made to consume artificial sweetener type stuff all of the time. And so to say, like, I'm going to give this up for God, God's probably like, hey, that's probably actually not the best for you anyways. On occasion, it's fine, it's whatever, but overconsumption of anything isn't good. And so that's so true. Like, saying that you're fasting from things, sometimes God actually wants you to make that change in your life. Like, it's not just something to fast from. Or people who, how do I even word this? We have a friend who really changed my perspective on this, because I said things we were going to fast from, and I said sweets as one, and she was like, I was thinking of doing that too, but I'm also just wanting to like have a better body, and so I feel like my intention wouldn't actually be for God. I would just be doing it so that I was being like, would maybe lose weight or something. So she said, I feel like I need to fast from something that doesn't necessarily benefit her in a way like bodily, but benefits her in just growing closer to God. Because she was like, I would like to give that up anyways, because it's, I don't know. So checking your heart and figuring out, what are you fasting for?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that changed my perspective, because I had just said that and I was like, oh, you're kind of right. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I should look up the definition of fasting.
Fasting is to abstain from all or some kind of food or drink, especially as a religious observance. That's interesting.
I thought it was interesting too, because
it's
like,
not just food or drink that we do.
but is it? You know what
But
I
it's
mean?
not that we do. You know what I mean?
I know.
Yeah.
But like, should it be? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because this can be cut out, but I was reading the Bible, and like Jesus fasted from food, and like, is that okay? Let me just turn to the verse, because it might actually say it before we just overthink it, and then it's just right there.
Story of our life. We will go into something in a Bible study for so long, and then we'll read the next verse, and it explained it in like a few words. And we're like, oh.
That's so good, Jesus. Thank you for laying it out for us. I don't know, because like, I feel like it, like, it's like, we're right. Like, it's becoming a revelation to me right now, because if you do fast from sweets, like, that's what we did. And we still like, yes, we got closer with Jesus because we were obtaining from something that had such a stronghold on our life. So like, yes, that's going to make a difference. But like, fasting is supposed to like be finding answers from God. And so like, in here it says, Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." So like, I think it is like supposed to be obtaining, not eating food or not drinking like whatever throughout a full day. You know what I mean?
Okay, so don't like come at us in the comments, because we're thinking this
You can
right
literally cut
at this
this out, 'cause I
very
don't wanna,
second.
like, speak something that's
I
not
don't
true.
want to speak something that's not true either. But you saying that is like, what is fasting? Fasting is depending, like, you have to depend on the Lord. I don't have to depend on the Lord to not eat sweets. There was a time when that didn't exist, but my body, in order to survive, I need food and I need water to live. But what does Jesus say? I am the bread of life. I am the living water. So, like,
Period. That's
up.
jokes on this, guys.
But here's the
I'm
thing,
just kidding.
and I was looking into this too, because it's more in, I think that it's healthy still to have seasons of your life where like, I'm going to set this aside and like focus on God, whatever. But to say you're fasting, I do think it's a deeper, like, this is a personal with you and God, and it has to be like this, and it has to be something that you actually depend on, not something that you're addicted to. Because setting it aside an addiction to spend time with Jesus is just what we should be doing anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't think about it that deep. I'm glad we talked about that, because
Same.
I really do
That's
think
wild.
it is. Where does it talk about Jesus fasting in the Bible?
Matthew chapter. Hold on.
Oh, it's right here. It's right in front of my face. I didn't write it down, but I did write it down, I
you're
guess.
good.
Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, read it for us.
Okay, so it says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, 'If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.' Jesus answered, 'It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God.'" Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. If you are the Son of God, he said, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift up their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answered him, it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all kingdoms of the world in their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away from me. I imagine how Jesus, that was not how Jesus would say it. I'm sorry. Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him and the angels came and attended him. That's great. Like, Jesus didn't eat for 40 days and 40 nights. Like,
I looked into that too. I did some research because I was thinking that's actually wild. And I had heard some people say he didn't eat or drink for 40 days or 40 nights. Our bodies physically can't do that. There was a pastor who tried to do that and like do the fast according to how Jesus did. And he died at day 30 because your body can't go that long without water. So then some people believe that he did just because he is the Son of God. And so it was he walked on water. He rose people from the dead. So obviously he's different, but he is fully human in his body form. So I don't know.
Maybe he just drank water, though, because it says he was hungry.
Yes, not that he was thirsty. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, too. You could, yeah. But even so,
that's
40
wild.
Days.
I couldn't imagine. We did it for one day, and I thought I was about to perish right there.
I had a freaking pretzel. Okay, can we talk about it, though? Can we just talk about this? Okay, so when fasting, I don't want to say like I do so good, but I do well. And when people ask stuff, I just say no. I don't want to explain that I'm fasting because I don't want to like boast or anything. So I just say no. Simple, done, easy. But twice now. So first time we were fasting.
I should have stopped you. I watched you and I was like,
man. And I'm not. So right now, can I mention that you and Colton are doing? So Abby and Colton, it's not necessarily a fast. It's just for self-control, like a spiritual discipline that you guys want to have. And so they're not doing sweets until they get married. Like they're just not having sweets. And so
9 months of no sweets.
9 months of no sweets. That's a whole baby in a womb. But yesterday, a friend offered me this like cinnamon pretzel thing, this tiny little deal. And I was like, oh, no, I've never tried that. And then, because she asked, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And she asked Abby, and I was like, oh, like, Abby can't have that because she can't have sweets right now. And so she doesn't know that. And so then Abby, no, can't have it. And I feel bad for Abby. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, I shouldn't be eating right now. I'm fasting. But also, when we were fasting from sweets, okay, let me just be so real, because I told Abby I had this whole epiphany. I empathize with Eve so much now because we give her so much crap. But like when we were at that little auction thing, whatever it was, Fairgrove deal.
A festival.
And then this person had this like astronaut candy. This doesn't even look appealing to me.
It's freeze-dried candy.
Yeah, it doesn't even look good to me. But it's every time someone says something new and I haven't tried, I'm just excited. I'm like, yes, new experience. But the person was like, would you like to try this, like, free sample? And Abby looks at me and she's like, can we? And I'm like, yeah, he said it's free, like, we can have it. And she's like, but can we? And I just don't even think about it. I'm not realizing. And I wasn't trying to sin against God or, like, the fast or anything, because that would not have been my sweet of choice if I were trying to break it. It wasn't even good. But it was, I'm not kidding. And I was like, yeah, we can. And so then Abby also had it. And, like, we have it, and I'm like, cheers. And then we, like, eat the candy. And I'm not kidding. The moment it, like, hits my mouth, I realized, like, it was too sweet because I haven't had sweets in so long. And I had, like, it's like my eyes were opened. I felt like Eve. And I was like, Abby was my Adam. And I just let her. And she was like, can we? And I said, we can. And I felt so bad. And so we ate the candy. And I walked off and I was like, man, I'm so sorry. And I just thought of Eve, like, when she's in the garden. And she was just... Eve, she was naive. She just didn't know because sin didn't exist and like none of that had ever existed before. And so why would she not trust this snake talking to her? No, this trust didn't exist. So she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Eats the fruit. And immediately like her eyes are open and she realizes she disobeyed God. She understands good and bad. I didn't have that whole like crazy revelation, but I was like, wow. Yeah. Wow. I'm not even kidding. It was the most spiritual thing. But then I did the same thing with the pretzel. Why do I do this? I don't know. Don't offer me new experiences of food. I will try it and I'll be excited. And even if I'm fasting.
So funny. I looked at you and I was like,
yeah.
And then I was just waiting for you to realize.
Did you notice when probably not, because it was literally like 5 minutes later.
I didn't notice whenever you noticed, but whenever you took it, I was like,
no, it didn't. That time it wasn't immediate.
I should have just said, stop.
No, stop. You dive and you
Haley would have thought we were
pretzel.
crazy.
But no, that's so important because the first time it was like a whole revelation to me. But then the second time I did it in a fast, I didn't realize till later. And I feel like in our life, not just in fasting, I'm talking about like sin and in disobedience, because this fast was a promise. Like, God didn't promise me to do this. I made this promise to him. Like, I want to give this up and get to know you better or have something from you. And so that was a promise I made to him. And so in those little moments where I felt like I broke it, it was less noticeable the second time. And so I feel like with sin, it'll happen one time and maybe you're like, oh, that's really bad, I shouldn't. And then the next time it's not as bad. And then, you know what I mean? So it's a whole rabbit hole there. But yeah. And so for people listening, if you're like really, really struggling with a sin and you don't know how to give it up and you have feel like you have tried everything, I would say seriously try fasting, because when you need and I'm talking about fasting from food fasting now that we mentioned that, when your body
it's so dependent on something.
Yeah.
And so whenever you fill it with, like Jesus says, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. So like, as soon as you give up food, you'll realize like, oh my gosh, I need something to fulfill me. And so when you do that, you form honestly, for me, it's already formed such a deeper relationship with God. And so it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So yeah, I would say, I mean, in all things that you're going through, fasting is a way to grow closer to God. And if you feel like you are deep in a sin and now you're in a place where you're numb and you don't even care, maybe it started off like a big deal and now it's like just a habit and you don't even know how to break it, I would say fast. And in the moments when your body is so hungry, be like, God, I need you. So you get used to saying no. That's the thing. You don't do it just to gain self-control. Like that's what I did before. I just gave stuff up. That was it. But you do it to obviously for the right reasons for God, but through it you gain self-control, because I remember people would offer me sweets more than I feel like anyone has ever. It was my birthday month too when we fasted from sweets, and so like no cake, no none of that, and so people were offering me stuff left and right, and I was just like, oh,
I
no,
skipped
that's okay,
that for
I
both of
can't.
these things. Sorry, that was
yeah. So I was like, no, I like can't do it, but I got so used to realizing I could say no, because I think a lot of times I would just say yes because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings if they offered something. But if I was tempted or like, man, I want sweets, I would just in my mind be like, no, I can't have that. And that should be our reaction to sin. And so if you are struggling to say no, you need to learn how to you got to retrain yourself how to say no. And fasting is a powerful way to do that, abstaining from something and training yourself to do that. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to get into how to fast?
Sure, I'm down
how
for
to
that.
Fast, how to pray?
I want you to mention something that you, in Matthew, that passage you just read of Jesus, right before that, and how it was right. Yeah, because when you told me that, I had never realized, and my
I didn't
brain
tell you
was...
that. Jesus told us that.
But my brain was baffled.
It's funny that you say, you talk about how we sin and then it just becomes easier and easier. Like Jesus is the ultimate representation of how we should live. Obviously, he lived a perfect life. And so whenever I'm reading about him and his walk on earth, Jesus got baptized too. So if any of you are new believers and you just got baptized, this is a prime example of how we should be living. So in Matthew chapter 3 and 13, do you want me to just read that? Mm-hmm. It says... In chapter 3, verse 13, it says, Then Jesus came from Galilee to Jordan to be baptized by John. But John tried to deter him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? Jesus replied, "Let it be so now. It is proper for us to do this to fulfill all righteousness." Then John consented. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was open, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." So Jesus just gets baptized. And so, like, for many of us, we just get baptized. Like, put yourself in these shoes. And then it goes immediately into chapter 4, and it says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted." Like, that is crazy. Like, immediately after getting baptized, we're going to be tempted. And so, like, I feel like it's easy in our lives to say, like, oh, I wasn't really changed because I was baptized. But, like, you are changed, and there's redemption. But that doesn't mean take it for granted. Start the change now. Take action steps. Do a fast if that's what you need to do. So, yeah, I thought that was just mind-blowing whenever Jesus was immediately baptized and then immediately tempted, because that's so true for so much of us. It's just how we react.
Yeah, that is so true. Like, I've heard people say that they want to be baptized because they just feel like they have like so much bad stuff, and they just want to be made new. They want to be made clean. And so Jesus does that. Baptism by water doesn't do that. It's representation. We've been through that a little bit. You're good. But where was I? Oh, like, yeah, Jesus is what cleanses you, not the baptism water, first off, but also once you are made new and you are made clean, yes, you have Jesus and you depend on him, but you are still gonna be tempted. And a lot of times you are tempted more. For Jesus, he was tempted like right after the moment he got baptized. And also in his moment of weakness, he hadn't eaten for 40 days or 40 nights. So in fasting, there's gonna be times where you feel really weak, and you might think, well, then I should just give in because I feel weak. But that's when you are made the strongest, when you come out on the other end of it.
And you dive into his word, because I feel like even in the fast yesterday, it was so easy for me to just like pick up my phone, and then I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm distracting myself. And that's like Satan trying to distract us from looking to God. Like, whenever we're in these divine moments we're supposed to be encountering God, like through a fast, it's so easy to turn to the things that will temporarily satisfy us instead of the bread of life, who will satisfy us forever.
Yeah, I did the same thing yesterday because I was so busy all day. I didn't have much time to think about being hungry. On the ride back to my house after that, we were talking about it, and I said, I'm honestly not doing too bad. But the moment I got home, the moment I got by myself, I started thinking, okay, I'm actually really hungry. I didn't realize. And so then not knowing how to stop thinking about being so hungry, I got on my phone for a second, and then I was thinking, this isn't why I'm doing this at all. I'm just avoiding my hunger when I'm supposed to be like,
that's not reliance on God.
It's supposed to be a reminder of the fact that I'm depending on God right now. Yeah, crazy. So you will be tempted. Yeah. And as Christians, we are, I think, tempted more because Satan wants us to mess up, and we will mess up. You're going to mess up, but he wants you to be defined by your mess ups so that then you think, I haven't changed. You start to question your faith. You start to question if it was genuine. You start to question if Jesus really died, if you're really forgiven, if you've really been saved, just because you fall into temptation from time to time. But that doesn't change the fact that Jesus died on the cross for all of your sins. Yeah. So temptation is real, and it's hard to fight against, but
I was laying on my bed like, I'm so hungry. Please help me. That's probably why I was crying so much. I was so emotional yesterday, and I still was today. And even like, I don't know if this was for you, but whenever I ate, like, it hurt because it was just like, you hadn't eaten all day. So then whenever you're eating, it's just like, ouch. There it goes. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have stomach problems. I don't know.
That's so sad. Not me.
It felt like just really like sad. Hitting an empty stomach.
I just felt so exhausted at night. When you texted me, I fell asleep before 8 o'clock because I was so. I think that's around the time. Am I getting a call? Mom. Hello.
Hello.
I'm recording the podcast, silly goose.
Oh. Right at the second.
Right at this second.
I forgot it was later.
It's okay.
Oh, no. I was just gonna see if you wanted to go tonight or not.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
Call me.
Huh?
Call me.
Okay.
Love you.
Love you
Abby.
too.
Bye.
Love you.
That's awkward.
Bye. That was so funny.
Oh, you know what's even crazier? Hold on. I
Tell
just had
me.
an epiphany. So, like, I was talking about how Jesus baptized, tempted, and then he immediately goes to preaching. Like, because he had that dependence on God. He didn't go,
Yeah.
like, he might have preached before, I don't know, but, like, he was preaching right after because he had that dependence on God and he knew, like, what it felt like to not have God. So, like, obviously, like, he was fulfilled with his spirit, and so, I mean, he's God, but
Yeah,
that's
but
crazy.
the order of that should be how we live our lives. Yeah.
That's crazy. That's good. Sorry, you can go into what you were talking
No,
about.
that's good. I don't have anything off of that.
Okay. What were you talking about? Oh, being so hungry.
Oh yeah, nah. That's okay. That's actually a good point. I was really hungry and I was exhausted so much that I was drained and getting tired. But we wanted to come on this podcast and not talk about just the negatives of fasting, because I've heard people present fasting in a way that makes it like, and you're so hungry and it's going to be so hard. And yeah, it is. So you should tell someone that so that they're prepared ahead of time. But you need to talk about the power of it,
How good it
and
is.
how good it is, because man, like, especially, okay, so pre-podcast, we talked a little about that. The fast I did last January, going into this one, was no, like, screens at all, basically, because in communications, I was screens 24/7, and so I felt like I had no room to give up socials or anything, but I did no phone, I, like no socials, no movies, no TV, and some people might live their life like that anyways, but I live by myself, and so at the end of the night when I get home and my house is just dead silent, it's just me and my dogs. Spooky. But the days felt way longer, because I'm always saying I don't have enough time, I don't have time for anything, but now my days felt really long when I got home and I just sat in silence for hours. Like, I'm cooking in silence, I'm doing all these things. I mean, I dropped music, I dropped everything, because I didn't want any outside thing getting in my brain, because I needed something from God bad. And what did I need from him? Three things. I said, God, number one, give me confidence, because I have none. Give me the ability to be a good leader, because I also feel like I have nothing for that. And help me not to care so much what people think. And then that led us to the podcast, honestly, because I wouldn't have done this had I not gone through the fast at the beginning of the year. So it was healthy for me, but then it brings me back to that headspace of, that wasn't a dependence. Those were things I just didn't need in my life. And if I lived my life like that, how much closer would I be with God if I came home every night? And I don't just watch TV 24/7. That makes me sound so lazy. I'm usually working when I'm home, and so I didn't let myself do that either.
But silence is loud.
Silence is loud.
You got to
Yeah.
fill that with something. And
Yeah.
so you're going to obviously naturally grow closer to God if you're filling it with his word and his truth.
I filled that silence because I think I literally told you this last night. I was like, my brain just doesn't shut off ever, and it's exhausting, and it like makes me hate myself most of the time. And so sometimes I'm like, I just need to have noise on. I need to have something so that I'm not stuck with my thoughts, because I can't take it. And so even as we talked about phones and how that was an addiction for me, and then I had a bad day and I was hard on myself. But in that moment, I thought I'd rather be addicted to my phone than have to sit alone in my thoughts all the time, because that's how bad it is. But last year, instead of escaping my mind through distractions, I escaped it through reading my Bible and prayer. And it changed my point of view going into that job, because I was not ready. Yeah.
Are you setting me up for something? What is it?
I was just going to ask a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, so when we say that we fast for something, do you think there are people who fast for things and then they don't get that, what they're asking for?
I think so.
I do too.
I think that it depends on where God wants you in that season. So I think that God, when you fast or pray for something and you don't get an answer immediately, maybe it's like next year, maybe it's years later. I think that it's all in his divine timing, and that we're not going to get what we ask for because it's not good, or if it's not what he wants for us in that moment. So we're not going to get those answers. I think that, yeah, sometimes you won't. Like, I fasted yesterday, and yes, like, I feel like I have more of a reliance on God, but I feel like I didn't get like immediate answers overnight. Like, even today, though, I told you I've been crying like nonstop. I've just been so emotional. Maybe it's because it's like almost that time of the month, but truly, I think God does move you though in ways, and so I've just been kind of emotional more towards him and how good he is. And so like today, even when I was in my car, like I just took time to recognize how good he is. Like the songs that were coming on, I was like, wow, like he's here for me in this battle, in these hard times. Like in James, when it says, consider pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. And one of the songs like said something like that. And then it was like, because he is with you. And so like, even though like they're hard, God has already won the victory because of Jesus. And so consider it pure joy because God is still with you, and you're still going to win the victory, even if it's not the outcome you want, or if he doesn't give you the answers that you want. It's the answers that is best for you.
Yes, I think Jesus modeled how to pray so well, and that was when the Son of God, he had the power to do anything at the snap of his fingers, but he still looked to God and said, your will be done. And so I think when we're fasting, we need to approach it with that posture of, maybe this is what I'm fasting for, but ultimately, God, it's your will over mine. I want you to guide it. I want it to be your plan. And I also think that depends on what are you fasting for? What is your goal? Because
I think everybody should ask that question before they go into it, because if you're just not eating for a day, what good is going to come out of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're not doing that, that's actually like eating disorder. I'm not kidding. That's another reason, because my family has history of eating disorders, that I've been scared to do anything that was like extreme in that way, because I think there's people who could try to cover up that they're...
Girl, we gonna eat.
Yeah, we gonna eat. But I think there's people who could cover that up and say they're fasting or they're doing it for the Lord, in that same way of, if you're just not eating and your motive is like, you're just not eating, that's not fasting. Not in a spiritual way. Fasting has been adopted, I guess has been adopted in the fitness field, which is completely different than the expectation in the spiritual. And so figure out what your motive is and why you're doing it. But I think where I didn't want to ask God for things is because I thought of people who were fasting and asking God for things like, God, I'm going to fast and bring me my future job, or I'm going to fast and give me this. I'm going to fast and give me this. But those are worldly things that are from God. I think God will give you things. It says in Scripture that he'll give you to like the desires of your heart. And some people think that that means the surface level, their desires, meaning their wants, the things that they hope to achieve in life. But the desires, this is what I prayed during the fast, because I was thinking, God, I don't even know what I need to fast for. Reveal to me the innermost desire of my heart that I don't see. I don't want the surface level. This is what I think I need to overcome or that I want to achieve. But the deep desire of my heart to know you and to be closer to you, what is holding me away from you? And that is what I want to fast for. And so I think when you fast for things that are character building, that's in accordance with God's will, and he's not going to withhold that from you. It might be a painful process to get there, but I think, are you fasting to gain something from him or to something that's going to build you to get to know him better? Mm-hmm. So
that's good.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that you should, like you said, go into it with a question, but I think there's so much more good that's going to come out of it, because he revealed some things in me that I didn't even know I was hurting from. And so that's also was really emotional. Just like God will give you more than you want sometimes, more than you want to hear, but it's good. It's freeing to experience those things, because otherwise you just hold it in and it's not going to be brought to the surface. So
yeah. I thought of the story of Solomon when God appeared to him in a dream and said, whatever you want, like, I'll give it to you. And Solomon said, wisdom. that was what he wanted. And so then the Lord gave it to him in abundance, because he didn't say something surface level. He didn't say, I want riches, I want fame, I want money, which is all of riches and money, I guess, are the same, but which was what all the people of that time wanted. Like, that was success back then. And so if he would ask for that, God could have gave him a little bit of it, because he said, I'm going to give you whatever you want. But when he said wisdom, he gave in abundance, because it was character building. But also, you look at Solomon, he wrote books like Ecclesiastes, which is my favorite book because I relate so much. Brother was an overthinker. I mean, deeply. And that whole book is like, nothing matters. Everything is pointless. Meaning, like, if God's not in it, there's literally no point to life, to existence, to anything at all. He sounds real dramatic, but he really just had so much wisdom that he was so weighed down. And so a lot of times when we ask God to reveal to us those things or grow those things in us, with it comes the journey to grow, the process of growth. I wrote this down because it made me think of my papa. He was praying one time for patience because he just felt like he was a very impatient person and he wanted immediacy. Like, he wanted things now and he wasn't good at waiting. And so I remember him saying to Mom, I am never praying for patience again, because in praying for patience came a lot of inconvenience, came a lot of testing of, like, now he's having to wait extra long, or he's meeting really frustrating people and he's having to learn how to be patient with them. And so I wrote down just a question I think is healthy for me, but honestly, whoever's listening, because we all want to grow as people the way that God has designed us and grow in those things. But I wrote, would I still ask for patience if it meant waiting and inconvenience? Would I still ask for wisdom if it meant that my mind would drive me mad? Would I ask for self-control if it meant facing more temptation? Kindness if it meant loving mean people? Contentment if it meant being in seasons longer than I hoped. Motivation if it means doing hard things. Humility if it means I'm my own worst critic. Strength if it means more adversity and trials. Direction if it meant surrendering my own plan. And dependence if it meant understanding how incapable I am on my own. Would I still ask to be better if I knew what I had to go through to get there? Because with Solomon, it was immediate. He had that dream. He woke up. But through that, you see Solomon go through, like, he had wisdom, he knew what was right, but he didn't do it because he got it so quickly. He didn't know kind of what it took to get there. And so I think sometimes in prayer and fasting, you can pray and fast and God won't immediately give it to you. Even if you fast for a few days, even if you give something up for a month and you don't receive it. And I think it's Thessalonians, he says, like, pray continually. You don't just stop at the end of that fast, because a lot of the things we should be asking for, the desires of our heart, are character building, and it's a process to get there. Yeah.
That's good.
That was just a thought, because those are things I've prayed for, and then sometimes I'm scared to pray big prayers like that. I really am, because honestly, like, do I want to pray for humility if it means that I'm my own worst critic? Because that was something I used to pray for a lot, because it said he humbles the exalted and he exalts the humble, and I wanted to be used by him so badly that I was like, God, like, make me less so that you are more. And I prayed that so persistently, and I became my own worst critic to a point which was not God's intention, of just hating myself. Humility is not hating yourself. Humility is lowering yourself so that God is raised. But you can be really easy to slip into when God starts answering these prayers, almost mental health like conditions, because same thing with wisdom. God, give me wisdom. And I'm just an avid overthinker. And so a lot of this is stuff like I've prayed for, and looking back and reflecting, my trials are what has gotten me to say that now I feel like I have begun to achieve some of those things. But they're big prayers, but they're hard prayers. They're heavy prayers. So I just say that for whoever's listening. God wants you to gain these things in your life because they make you more like the character of Jesus. But
be ready.
Hard. Yeah, be ready. It's hard. It's not easy. Self-control, if it meant facing more temptation. You want to know how to overcome self-control? You look temptation in the face and you say, no, I'm not going to do it. And that's hard when you're tempted over and over and over. But that was Jesus there. And in his weakest moments, like, hadn't eaten for 40 days and he had the power to turn the bread to a rock. I think if I was Jesus, I would have been tempted to be like, Satan, who do you think that you are? Like, of course I can turn that bread to a rock. You know what I mean? Bread to a rock, rock to a bread. But yeah.
It's so easy to look at other people and say like, oh, I wish I had that, but you're not willing to pursue the sacrifice that it does take to get to those places. Okay, so in James chapter 4, verse 2 through 4, is that what you said? Okay. You desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, everyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God.
Yeah, I feel like that just ties back into if what you're asking are worldly things, don't be upset if God doesn't grant that, because he doesn't promise that ever in the Bible. He doesn't say, like, there's another verse, it's in Matthew 7, I think 7, where it says, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you. And so many people take that verse and think, then I can ask for whatever I want. I can seek whatever I want, and like God's going to grant that. But not if it's of the world. He's never going to give you
an abundance of money.
Yeah, that's probably not from Jesus. And a lot of times we talk about how Satan doesn't have any power. We have the Holy Spirit, we have God, but Satan does have power in this world. And so he can give you money, he can give you fame, but you will not be fulfilled. And so a lot of times God won't give you those things because he cares more about your heart than he does your status, than he does your success. He cares more about you and your soul. And I don't want to know what a lot of people at the top have to do to get there.
That's good.
I like how it says, you do not receive because you do not ask, because the people are like trying to find their own way. I'm going to get this if I do that. Like, I'm going to kill in order to get this. I'm going to do this in order to get this. And so then God's like, you haven't even asked me. But then again, but if you ask with the wrong motives, then he's not always going to grant that to you. So why do you want more money? Do you want more money because you want to give it all to the poor? Very few in this world, that's their intent. Very few.
Yeah, it says in here, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. When you have more money, you spend it on what you want, not what is pleasing to God or kingdom building.
Yeah. You want more influence so that you can use it to point people to God, or so that people look to you. Like, that's in all things. You can make anything sound really good and say, God, I want this because I'll use it for your kingdom, or because I'll do this. But God knows our hearts better than we do. He knows. That's why I'm like, God, reveal to me the deepest desires of my heart that you want to grant, not the surface level stuff that I think is what I want, because he actually knows. And if you pray according to his will and your will be done, he's not going to give you worldly things a lot of times, but he will do these character building things. There's a verse that's like, you ask for wisdom. It's in James as well. What is it? It's right at the beginning. I think it's in chapter 1.
If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you.
Yeah.
Is that the one you want? Okay.
Yeah. If you who lacks wisdom ask God, he will give it to you generously. He's going to give you those things that build your character and make you more like Jesus. So that's the stuff I'm going to ask for, because I know that's according to his will, and I know that that's what he wants of me and of my heart, more than worldly things that I could ask for.
Yeah.
So I don't want to test him in that. That's the other thing. And with our fasts, we got to be real careful, because in that part that you read about Jesus and the devil, he said, do not put the Lord your God to the test. You've heard that in scripture, don't test the Lord your God. And so when you're fasting, you got to be careful not to test God. This is a test of you and your heart and your dependence, not on whether or not God's going to align with what you hope for. So
That's good.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, do you have anything else beyond that? We've talked about our kind of journeys with fasting a little bit, and more so the intent of fasting, but how do you fast or how do you pray? What does that look like for someone who wants to do this?
I have some verses that kind of lay that out of how we should fast / hashtag pray.
Hashtag pray.
In Matthew 6, starting in chapter 5, it kind of talks about prayer and it lays out how we should pray. And then right after it talks about fasting and how we should fast. So do you want me to read that? Okay. So in chapter 5, it says, and if you're watching this, turn with us and take some notes because this is really, it's one of our most important things. We have free access to God to talk to him through the Holy Spirit. So we shouldn't be taking that for granted. But anyways, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray, standing in synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. That's just crazy because, like, they've got their reward because they're being seen by other people. It's not the reward from God. That's their selfish reward. So that's good.
Clearly, that's the reward they wanted, though.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. This, then, is how you should pray. And then it kind of lays out a prayer. It says, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us of our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. I'll read 14, 15. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others for their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins.
One of the things I really liked about that in how to pray was when it said, when you pray, do not heap up phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think they will be heard for their many words so also back to the previous, when you pray, doing that in private and not doing it publicly because you're not doing it to be applauded. But I used to use that as my excuse not to pray in public at all. Because when I was on the worship team, they would go around and like, okay, you pray for this, you pray for this. And I broke out in hives and I couldn't, and I felt like I was going to pass out. I just couldn't. Like I physically could not because my anxiety was so bad. And I just said, like, I pray to God in private. Is that not the most boastful thing? You know what I mean? To be asked in public to pray and say, I only do that in private. And this is what we've been trying to help our girls with at the end of small group. It's really hard when you say, who wants to pray? And then nobody volunteers, because what if you're in a situation and like we're trying to train them up? What if you're in public and someone knows you're a Christian or something and says, they ask you to pray, they say, will you pray with me? And you're like, no, I can't pray in front of people. Like I'm too terrified. And so making sure your heart is in the right place and you have prayer time when it's just you and the Lord, because that's like the most special thing. But also not using that verse as an opt-out to not pray with other people, because people need prayer. And I used to not want to pray because I would hear other people pray, and I think their prayers were just so much better than mine, and I didn't know how to pray, and I was just scared that and I'm like, everybody's going to judge me. But then right there it says, like, don't use empty phrases. Don't even try to throw in big words that you don't know. Don't pray in a way that sounds like confusing or so miraculous and amazing. Some people pray those prayers. That's incredible. That's amazing. Good for them. But my prayers are not less than. And so when I start my prayer with, hey, God, he's like, hey, Tori, like he hears me. And so for whoever's listening, just knowing that if you've heard other people pray and feel like your prayers aren't worthy of being heard, that's a lie that the enemy wants you to believe so that you don't talk to God anymore. But you have access to, and we should. Like you said with the Bible, if you have it, if you don't have one, message us and I'm going to buy you a Bible. Like straight up, I will. But yeah, just knowing that we're able to and not being so in our heads that we're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, he literally lays it out. Like I wrote kind of like notes beside it. Mm-hmm. I have our Bible study thing that we have. It kind of lays it out in one of the devotions to do this. So it starts your prayer off like you said. Our Father in heaven, and that's signifying who you pray to. Hey, God. That's how we start every time. Hallowed be your name. And that's just signifying that he's greater, he's holy, and he's set apart. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's like on earth, everything's crazy, but in heaven, it's all calm and peaceful. So like his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then give us today our daily bread. That's praying over our daily needs, not just like the things of this world that we think we want. It's literally the needs, like food, water, that we have to get through our day. Like we've become so easy to not pray over those things because we have such easy access, I feel like. But one day it could be taken away. So it's important to pray for those. Forgive us of our debts. So debt, I wrote, it equals sin. So forgive us of our sins, as we have also forgiven our debtors, so the people who have sinned against us or hurt us. And then it says, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. And that just shows, it was funny, I was like reading this again last night, but that just shows a reliance on God, not ourselves. And so you're just ending it with, God, I'm relying on you through this day, not myself. So help me through it.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
And what I love so much about that is Jesus' prayer. Like, he's the one who modeled it. So that's not even a writer of the Bible saying the Holy Spirit, like, revealed this to me in prayer. They heard Jesus pray and they wrote it down because they'd never heard prayers like that before. They only heard the prayers that were the crazy words and the this and this and this. And Jesus was like, no, it's so intimate. It's your Father. You're talking to your heavenly dad. Like, this is, yeah. And the way that he laid that out, and forgiving your debts as you forgive your debtors, that is like unheard of, to just forgive those who have wronged you. It was eye for an eye. And so everything that he was saying in that prayer is important for us now, but it was revolutionary back then. And so we need to model, I agree, like, it's laid out there like that for us. And so if you don't know how to pray, or if you're scared to, I would just memorize the Lord's Prayer. Yeah. Really do. And you can just say that back to him and know that he hears it until you're comfortable enough to pray other words to him, because that is a holy prayer right there.
Yeah.
Holy heavenly prayer. All right. And then into fasting.
Mm-hmm. All right. So right after it talks about prayer, it talks about fasting in verse 16, and it says, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. I read this before we started fasting, and I was like, should I put like oil on my head? But I'm in my, like, I have the greasiest hair. No, but you should not just be putting oil on your head. The purpose of that is to say, like, get up as you normally do. Yep. Get cleaned up. Don't go throughout your day grumbling and being so, like, literally boastful that you're fasting for God. Nobody should notice. And that's, like, why we were so secretive and we don't talk about it out loud to other people, because we don't want others to look at us and be like, oh, they're so holy, like, on the girls. But it's literally for God, and that's our only purpose. So
even when I ate that stupid pretzel, Abby wasn't like, no, we're fasting and make a huge deal. I made the choice and I had to live with it. But really, when you were offered that, you just said no. You didn't say, like, you didn't have to go into an explanation. So it's not even just that you don't look really terrible and gloomy and you're all complaining. It's when people bring it up, you don't use that as an opportunity. Now I can brag because I wasn't going to say anything, but since you brought it up, no, that's not your intent for it. And especially if you're fasting for something and you're praying for God for something, then he's like, why would I reward that? Like, you have already received a reward of appreciation and people thinking highly of you. So that's enough for, yeah.
That doesn't mean keep it in forever, though. Like, I definitely encourage to talk about it later with people and, like, show them how good it is to fast, because, like me, I didn't really know how good it was until we have experienced it for ourselves. But yeah, talk about it with others, show them how good it is so that they can experience a closer relationship with Jesus. So. Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, we're talking about it right now. So, But I think that that's important. Exactly what you just said. Once you've seen the faithfulness of God through it, then you do share it with others, because your story now and your story with God. And so that could be inspiring to somebody. Not that you're doing it to just be an inspiration, but it could be what motivates them too. And then they experience the change for themselves. And so we can talk about this all day long, but it's you experiencing the change for yourself. I've heard so many sermons on prayer and fasting, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it until I'm alone, crying out to God. I have that's when I got it. That's when it sunk in for me.
All right. So with all that being said, we just want to encourage you guys. If you're hearing this, we always do this for the one. If it impacts one person, obviously it's for God, but we want to at least just help one person. It's not about the fame or like everybody in the world hearing just us, because it's not just us, it's God. And so we do want others to hear it. So if this impacted you, we encourage you to send it to somebody else. And we just want to encourage and help anybody that we can.
So if you are the one and this impacted you, so happy. If you're not the one, send it to someone. Maybe they're the one.
So happy if you're not the one, get out.
So as we said in the beginning, this is a podcast that is for God, but it is to you and from us. And with that being said, we are signing off. So
XOXO.
Godly girls. Yay.